This is the 18th season of Bass Talk Live. With your host, Matt Pangrath. BTL is brought to you by Lowrance, Bass Cat Boats, AFCO, Ducket Fishing, Strike King Lures, Sunline, Big Bite Baits, Spro, X-Zone Lures, Gamakatsu, The Bass Tank, Denali Rods, and Pro Guide Batteries.
PTL, coming at ya!
Good Monday, everybody. It is January 24th. The month has just flown by, the first month of the 2022 season of BTL. And today we are going to talk bass fishing with the one and only NPFL Angler Open Angler Live Scope forward-facing sonar aficionado and owner of the Bass Tank, John. You ready for it?
Yeah,
Soukup.
Oh, wow.
John Soukup, who I've only known for 12 years. But I introed you with the correct pronunciation of the last name, and 2022 will be full of more proper pronunciations. John, thanks for making the drive from the Bass Tank Studios down to be a guest on Bass Talk Live today.
Glad to be here. Excited. Let's talk some fishing.
You've got a lot on your plate, and we're going to get into that today. I mean, a lot. Like, how old is your newborn now?
He is about 10 days and 12 hours old.
Is it
14 hours?
It's your fourth one.
It is my fourth child, second son.
Fourth child, second son. Now, your first son is the silent assassin. I've been in the boat with him several times. I think I've heard him say 4 words. He will catch fish and not even say anything, and you'll look back and hear the ploop, and it's him throwing a fish back, and you're like, hey, like typically we're like, got one.
Yeah, there's none of that. Nope. He just catches them and releases them.
Does it get easier? Like, is the fourth one easier than the first one? Or is it just different? Because I am not a dad.
Well, it's been 8 years since we've had our last one, so a little bit of starting over, a little bit of forgetting, remembering what you forgot, Yeah. So it is a little bit more pure in that we can coach each other, my wife and I, to, hey, instead of getting annoyed about some things like the baby crying at night and stuff like that, hey, let's enjoy this. This is most likely going to be the last one that we have like this. So enjoying, like stopping and smelling the roses a little bit more. And it'll probably mean he'll be a real spoiled little thing. I think we're a little too old. We're going to be like those, we're finally hit that age where we're going to be those parents like, whose kid is this? He's out of control. We're just tired. Like, just let him do whatever. We've already raised 3, right? I don't know. Probably not.
Like I said, we're going to get into your crazy schedule, what you have coming up. You're headed along with me to go fish the first Bassmaster Southern Open of the season on the Kissimmee chain that kicks off next week or 2 weeks from now.
On my 40th birthday.
Really?
Yep.
Happy early birthday. I'm
not over the hill. I'm on top of it. That's what I'm saying.
We're going to talk what's going on at the Bass Tank, some new technology that Lowrance just released in combination with their Ghost trolling motor. I believe it is called the Ghost 360. I saw Zeke post a little video about it, all sorts of videos popping up on YouTube. Get a little bit of lowdown on that. We're going to dive into the NPFL season, kind of one of the faces of the NPFL last year, winning 2 of the 6 stops and being in the Angler of the Year race. We'll talk about kicking that season off in February in Cumberland. And then we're going to take some calls. The last time we had John in, we opened up the Sunline Hotline, take some calls, some electronics calls, talk a little bit about what's going on at the Bass Tank. Everyone's trying to get their season ready to get going for the spring in 2022. One of the, I guess I would say, I don't want to say it was a surprise show, but I kind of had a nuts and bolts show with Matt Looney on from Pro Guide Batteries, and the response that I got back from that, I asked a bunch of dumb battery questions, John. Like, You know how I am when I come in and ask you about stuff. I get a lot of chuckles and looks in my direction like, no, like really, it's easy, Matt. You can do this. So I was like, we're going to have you in. We'll open up the Sunline Hotline in the second half of the show and take some questions of that. But I want to open up with the first segment. Man, it's finally happened. Jeffries retires, and for 10 years, I just give him heck about the Carolina rig. Do you throw the Carolina rig at all?
It has been. I used to, but it's been some years.
When was the last time you remember just smashing them on a Carolina rig?
I blew them up on Kanawha one time when the Cabin Fever events were going on, and the trap bite died, and so I broke out the old Carolina rig and a little June bug trick worm and Caroline the edges of that hydrilla, and I think my dad and I had like in the high 20s, 27, or we smashed them.
But not recently.
That's been a decade ago.
When was the last time you had one tied on, even in a tournament?
Well, I think I've had them potentially this last year at some point. It was at the bottom of the box, ready to go just in case.
And that case never came to fruition.
Well, I went to Florida, so Harris chain, just in case. Anytime I'm around hydrilla, I like to have a lighter one, and then anytime. I probably should have had one at Pickwick. That would have been a good one to throw it on potentially, but yeah. I didn't throw it then. So
all right, the first Strike King Bassmaster College Series at the Harris Chain, presented by Bass Pro Shops. It was a slugfest for the guys at the top, and guess what? I run into another name. So Matt Messer and how do you say this, John? Lafe, Laffy. Lafe?
Let's go with
Lafe?
Lafe.
Lafe?
I don't know.
Lafe?
Might as well. Let's just...
Lafe? Okay. They won with a 2-day total weight of 61 pounds, 13 ounces.
That's a tournament.
They had 36 pounds, 7 ounces on the second day. That's over a 7-pound average per fish, John. That's a big bag.
Were they throwing the rig?
Well, that's what we're going to get to. So if you go over to the Bassmaster, it says the winners split their time between a Texas rigged Magnum trickworm and Carolina rigged creature baits on day one. By day's end, they were sold on the ladder, and day two saw them catch all of their weight on the C rig.
That's awesome.
College tournament, I think it was 250 boats, massive, down in Florida, 36-7, all on the C rig. So I don't know if Jeffries listens to the show anymore, but if he does, a tip of the cap. The C rig is alive and well.
Now, was it a 3-foot leader or like one of those monster 5 or 6 foot leaders? Now, that would be interesting.
I don't know. Let's see if it.
And I threw it at Broken Bow in the BFL in 2018.
You did?
Or 2019, whenever we were at
You just
Broken
remembered
Bow.
you did?
Yeah, I had a co-angler that was local. And last 2 hours of the day, we went out on his water and threw Carolina rigs. That was the last time.
Trouble averted. Oh, they didn't plug their boat in after day one. I love all the college stuff. I'm going down here to see if there is anything about the.
These guys are getting
about
these
the
kids
leader.
are getting good and better and
really
better
good.
and better.
You sponsor some younger guys with the Bass Tank.
I love working with. I mean, beyond just sponsoring. I did the youth thing with the Bass Nation for a long time, and I think that's the most exciting time is when people are learning and getting just the thrill of the discovering the unknowns of bass or any kind of fishing, but bass fishing.
Yeah. No, it doesn't say how long the leader was. I might have to reach out and try to get these kids' numbers and get them on for a Carolina rig victory. Also coming up this week, all of the MLF Pro Circuit anglers are kicking off their 2022 season down at Sam Rayburn. That tournament starts Thursday. A lot of local guys are expected to do really well in that. Also facing some cold fronts, some frosty stuff.
Yeah.
I saw Clark Green was like, yeah, I'm going to be a little late to the lake. I can't get my rod boxes open on that.
Is there grass or is there no grass? That kind of thing. I think that's a big deal right now.
It is. And Rayburn fishing really well over the last couple of years. So we've seen them kick the season off at Rayburn a couple times in the past. And sometimes it's been a slugfest and sometimes it's been tough. But I have not explored the fantasy fishing yet for the MLF side. I know there is fantasy fishing for that pro circuit side. So after the show today, I'm going to dive into that. I don't know if you can.
I got an email. I wanted to do. I've been wanting to do that as well.
Well, you can get into it if we can make groups and things. I don't know if it's an individual, if you do groups like you used to back in the day, but I will be exploring that. Have you ever fished Rayburn this early in the year?
Yeah, February one time I did, and I think it was a Costa event. We were there.
Yeah. Trap, the red trap. That's the deal down there in that East Texas.
That Rayburn Red, huh?
I was watching the first Strike King Pro Team Journal that came out on the Kings of Bass channel. Rather Outdoors is doing all of their in-house. It's probably the best produced series in the industry right now. I know there's a lot of them out there. I'm not trying to point any figures, but it's really well done. And it was Castledine and Faircloth in the boat, both chucking traps. I was just interested to see that dynamic between those two.
Two aggressive guys.
Yeah. Well, Faircloth's kind of laid back there, but they're catching them on the traps. And then also, big shout out to Carl and Kayla Jacobson for their new baby girl, Riva.
That's really exciting. I saw them on the at the Bassmaster Open on Grand on the dock, and congratulated them and told them I had one on the way as well, and we kind of lined out dates, and we were about the same time, so about a week apart from each other. That's pretty cool.
But that's cool. Riva, I think it's a Rivah, Riva. So it already has a little Australian accent to it. See what I mean there? It's got like the little ode to both of those.
Yeah.
What did you name your boy?
Joel.
Yeah. Joel Soukup.
Yep. Well, his first name's after my dad.
Okay.
Lawrence. So my dad went by Larry. You knew him.
I knew it was Larry.
And we were undecided about what to do. My first name is actually Lawrence.
Oh, okay.
So my first son's John. We were undecided, and my dad since has passed, and my boy, the older son, came in and said, why don't we call him Grandpa Larry? So that's how we went ahead and said, yeah, let's do that. Name him after Grandpa. So
awesome. Things are about to get really Western as far as schedule wise. And, I've talked to a bunch of different people, whether I talk to Brad or I'm talking to Jared Miller or anyone else. They're like, man, how is John going to do this? I hear he's fishing the Opens. I know he's fishing the NPFL. He's got the bass tank. He's got the baby on the way. What does your schedule look like for the next? And you just started a YouTube channel that you're putting content out, and I know you're filming it recently because the stuff is, you can tell based on the weather. What does your schedule look like starting now on the 24th through February? I mean, it gets cranked up and doesn't settle down, does it?
Oh man, I'm one day at a time right now. This week alone, the preparation, that's just something we're going to record on the YouTube thing as well, is like I've got a new Yamaha in, so I got to break that in. I got new wraps, truck, boat, the Jersey thing. We already got that that's out of control. It's coming. But I got to break in the boat, man. I haven't even broken the boat. I've got new batteries on the way, so we're going to have to re-rig my entire boat this week, make sure it's running right. I've got to register my boat and I just got the motor in last week. So yeah, man, and not to even mention all the tackle prep and stuff, because I just took everything out of the boat from last week, after the baby was born. Man, it's all about making sure the business is in order before I head out. Make sure everybody knows their responsibilities, and then I've done my responsibilities. Can't get on anybody for failing a job that I was supposed to do something for them for, which happens all the time, So yeah, I mean it's really hectic on that side. But then as long as I got my tackle in order, I can have peace of mind before I leave.
That's the thing that bugs you, is not being ready to hit the water when you leave.
I need to know how many packs of what I have and where they're at. And I need to have touched everything, thought through everything. There's a mental side to tackle prep that I've tried to avoid because of the time commitment that it takes. Mm-hmm. But there's something to do with that translates into good fishing for me. So I'm that guy that's out there, and I think you've seen me 100 times out there. The sun's down, everybody else is inside, and I'm out there still playing with something that I don't really even need to. But
I remember so I've only seen you really, I guess, out of it one time, I would say. And that would be that Toyota series, 3 years ago down at Rayburn. And you were messing with something with completely unrelated to fishing. I just know that I saw you on the water. We were rooming together and you were dealing with another business venture. And it was the only time that I've ever seen you at an event not 100% dialed in. And you struggled in that event there. But I remember thinking, man, like, this guy's got a lot on his plate that he's dealing with to try to then be able to get to the point where you can focus 100% on fishing. Do you remember that event? Like, I mean, it seems like like we were all around each other, and you were just, it seemed like you were, when you're at a tournament, you are all in. Like, that's a thing. Like, John, I mean, you are laser focused on it. And I think that's the only time I've ever seen you at an event not just 100% focused on the best pattern, the best way to catch the fish, what's going on the lake on that time.
Yeah. I'm a contractor. You know, I've been a flooring contractor since I was 19, 20 years old. And the river had flooded the Margaritaville Casino. We did the original tile and carpet on that thing. And when it flooded, there was a massive rehab going on at the same time. And it was like, you know, the casinos are like, we want our money now. We want it done now. And we got that contract to do the rehab on it. So that's what was going on at that time. So I was floating out in the middle of the lake, 90% of practice, on the phone trying to find service, you know, getting the crews together, organizing.
Worried about the floor and the river spirit.
Yeah.
So when you go to the river spirit, that's your floor.
Yeah, actually, that big tile through there. If anybody knew anything about, there was so much leveling to do on that job. It was a big project, geez. And most 90% of that I literally laid in my own hands. Actually, not just my guys, but that was one of the last projects I laid with my own hands. Actually.
Huh.
Yeah.
So you leave this week then for the Bassmaster Open, and you obviously had an incredible year on the NPFL last year. You won over $100,000 in those 6 events, dude.
Yeah,
and it seemed like you had a tremendous amount of the live time on it. What was the catalyst to go ahead and say, you know what, let's just add as many opens as we can fit in on top of a NPFL schedule?
The love for bass, the love for BASS. You know, Bass Nation, the roots of growing up through the Bass Nation, being in the Bass Nation National Championship a couple times, the dream of fishing the Classic at some point. It's just something that I don't think anybody my age or older, or maybe even a little bit younger, I don't think we can get that out of our blood. You know, that Bob Cobb voice in the back of our head watching bass in the morning, like, and that's it. That's the I want to someday be a part of that. So, you know, I got the opportunity to fish the Open on Grand at the end of last year. Jumped in that was my first Open as a boater, and had a really great finish.
Were you leading after day 2?
I was.
Okay, I couldn't remember if you were.
I ended up in 4th. I was leading after day 2, and you know, dude, that was awesome. Have the picture on the front page of the website, and the bass treated me amazing. You know, it was awesome. Just so, you know, could I be a 2-tour fisherman someday? That would be a good problem to have. You know, I would love to have that opportunity.
That Open was interesting for you because you weren't in it for the points. You could not make the Bassmaster Classic because you didn't fish all 3 of them. And I remember going into it, you said, hey, I'm either going to have a really big bag or I'm not going to catch anything, but I'm going to go for it. And I was in a different position where I was, you know, if I could catch a decent bag, I had a chance to make it through the points. But if I remember correctly, you told me after like day 1, like you had nothing in the boat, right? Which day was it? Like was it day 1?
Well, I mean, both days I caught a couple early or missed a couple early, and then it ended up happening at like 2:00.
But what did you have on day 1 at 2:00? Did you catch all those fish like in the last couple hours? I thought.
Yeah, I had a couple good ones that counted. I think I might have had a limit, but I only had a couple that really counted. And then I caught them at the end of the day. Figured them out at the end of the day. And then I thought I was going to repeat that day 2, and I had to change it all up on day 2. Same thing happened as far as the order of when I caught them, but I caught them on top on day 1. I caught them on a jig on day 2.
That's something that I think you're really good at, is staying in it mentally and instead of punting. Like, you don't ever really punt from what I've seen. Like, to just go catch a like what I've seen from the NPFL, the way you've won those tournaments, what you did at Grand, how you typically fish. Like, you will stick with what you think the best pattern is to come in with a weight that starts with a 2.
That's taking time, man, to build. Like, I wasn't that way 10 years ago. I wasn't that way when I did the Bass Nation. I was a lot of 12-pound guy. On the worst day, I caught 12. On the best day, I caught 12. And it was good for some points, but it wasn't really good for a lot of wins. And I had to change that mentality, and it's taken some time. It's taken some work. Fishing in the winter for giant fish has helped. Get that comfort zone with the time it takes to actually catch and locate and catch big fish. So, yes, that's still a work in progress. But to get that confidence where you're going out and saying, hey, I'm looking for 5 to 7 bites today, and I'm going to stick with it, and then not let the wheels fall off, I think that is what makes a Jason Christie. That is what makes a Greg Hackney. That's if you look at all those greats that have actually have stacks and stacks and stacks of wins, that's what they have in common. They don't care if they come in with 0. They care more about, I want to win. And it takes a lot, man.
When did that start for you? Like what, 4 or 5 years ago, would you say?
Yeah, I mean, I started racking up a lot more wins probably 4 or 5 years ago. It seemed like the Bass Nation, I remember, they went to that win and you're in style, and I think I would win at least 1 or 2 a year there. And I started to build more confidence that way. But going ahead and deciding to fish for big fish, and it doesn't necessarily mean that you're using heavy line or heavy tackle, but I will say, not being scared, like going down to Florida now, same thing, man. I've tried to tackle prep really light. I'm actually going to weigh my tackle. I'm trying to reduce.
Like on a scale?
Yeah, like a physical scale. I'm going to maybe put a YouTube thing on it and be like, how much, because I don't know, boat performance wise, that's one thing. I'd like to know, hey, is it 150 pounds? Is it 5? What is that pound of tackle? But also like mentally wise, how do I just keep it clean and organized with everything else that I got going in my life? You hear these stories about, I'm the guy, like I jump up, I wear a white t-shirt every day. Like I don't want to have to think about what I have to wear. The less that you have to think about things, the more routine that you are, the more efficient you are on the things that you need to focus on. And I feel like that's the same way on the water. The less I have to worry about the 20 different tackle techniques that I could potentially use and just stick with the 2 or 3 that I've proven out. Even though I've got a lot of, I'm a 30 rod guy on my boat. I think the more efficient you can be in tuning into those, especially when it comes to the big fish.
You still wear those boots every day?
I do in the winter.
We haven't been out in the boat recently for a while. You have these size 16 boots that just eat the trolling motor pedal. We're always like, man, for a guy who's so good at like micro adjusting and panning and fighting it, you just wear these big giant boots. Mm-hmm. But they're comfortable. Would you say? I mean, to me, it kind of seems like that the 2019 season. I don't know if a lot of people realize this, but you had one heck of a year in 2019. You won the points division in the BFL Okie, the points in the BFL Okie division, and had your finishes here were 7th, 5th, 4th, 25th, and 27th, and that's a really strong finish. I remember how pumped you were at that time with a lot of those back to back top 10s, but from there it seems like you really that was kind of the catalyst for your career, I guess, going national after that. Did that give you a lot of confidence to win that points division title?
It gave me a lot of confidence. There was a local guy in the Bass Nation that told me one time, I asked him a long time ago when I was just fishing jackpots, hey, when do you know to go to the next level? And he's like, when you finish in the top 2 of every local tournament you fish, like every little jackpot. Mm-hmm. And I remember at that time thinking, that's pretty ridiculous. Like but then all of a sudden it started happening. And so then, then you go to the Bass Nation, and then all of a sudden it starts happening. And then you go, the BFLs, and all of a sudden it starts happening. So yeah, absolutely. That's how the confidence is built. But I will say that one thing that really, really helped me out that a lot of pros don't have the opportunity to do is I had to step away from bass fishing for an entire year.
I remember that.
Yeah. And that was at the start of the Bass Tank. So we started the Bass Tank in 2018 when I fished the Force Wood Cup. Mm-hmm. And so after fishing the Force Wood Cup, I kind of felt like a little bit of dream had come true. I'd kind of maybe hit the pinnacle of where I'd be at in bass fishing. I didn't know. And the Bass Tank taking off, we have so many pan fishermen. I always tease you about being a bass hole because you're not paying attention to the crappie fishermen and the pan fishermen. And so I had an opportunity to fish with the Wally Marshall. Zeke and I did, and we got second place in the Wally Marshall. That was the inaugural one. So our customer base blew up with the crappie, the pan fishermen. And so that's what I did for an entire year was go crappie fishing, fish crappie tournaments. I kind of just got back to having fun fishing, man. And there was something in that allowed me to see a little bit more of the picture of the prey versus the predator personalities with the bass versus the crappie. And a biological thing kind of started clicking with how they interact with each other a little bit better. And I got to spend that entire year working on my electronic skills, my peace of mind, just a lot of things, man. So when I got the invite to fish the NPFL, and I just felt like everything mentally in life was in order to be able to have that success. And so, no, I don't think it was a fluke at all. I think it was a little bit of everything in life coming in at the right moment. Plus, man, like I said, a lot of pros don't get the chance to just step back and work on their skills for an entire year. They have to continually, and so they kind of can get in ruts. I think we can. So it's kind of an interesting thing that I've kind of tried to keep in my mind, like, how do I mix my fishing up a little bit? And that's why, for me, I love to hunt. My boy loves to hunt, but I really go out full out in the wintertime. I fish a lot in the wintertime.
I've noticed.
And that's to get all that year in, get it all filtered out of me, go have fun, just catch giants, relax, have a lot of fun. And you're tuning your skills in, especially for those first winter and spring tournaments as well.
I want to go down this path, John, because I've been a big proponent of honing your bass fishing skills and your electronic skills by crappie fishing. And we see a lot of the Jason Christies and Mike McClellans and a lot of the guys that Tommy Biffle that crappie fish a lot during the off season. And I ask this question a lot on BTL. Does it help your bass fishing? And I am a firm believer that my ability with electronics and fish behavior is a lot, especially over the last 3 years because of spending some time in the boat with you with crappie fishing. I want you to deep dive in this as to how targeting crappie during the winter can help you catch bass for the other 9 or 10 months out of the year, if you believe that that is true.
I 100% believe it's true. I will argue if people want to argue, but as a whole, bass fishermen, we're pretty arrogant. We're pretty full of ourselves. We don't listen to a lot of advice. At least openly we won't. Like secretly, we may go study each other and stuff. But I try to give everybody that wants to learn. Now, since the growth of the forward shooting sonar. Okay, mm-hmm. This is where this takes place. A lot of guys will call and say, "Hey, I want how do I get better at my live scope? How do I get better at my active target? Things of that nature." And my first response is, if they'll listen, it's to go target crappie. The reason being is that targeting crappie are just big floating turkey. They just sit there, and occasionally they'll scatter off or get. But for the most part, you can get right up on them with a 14-foot rod, a 12-foot rod, and you can just drop right on their nose. You can watch how they behave. You can learn on electronics to identify a fish, its head from its tail, which direction it's going, if it's going left or right, boat control, boat orientation, how to sneak up and stalk that fish, how the effects of dropping a jig on its belly, how it affects that fish versus coming in on its head, how that fish is reacting if it's going to heat up. What does that mean when it heats up? If guys that haven't been looking at a lot of forward shooting sonar wouldn't even understand what I'm saying, that the fish is getting hot. It begins to flicker and then it starts to glow, and like it's got its attention on that. And so you learn to read the fish a lot better. Now, the reason why you can't really do that starting out on a bass as quickly is just because bass they shark around. They like mm-hmm. to move. And so it's harder to do that on a bass. So those concepts translate into bass fishing as well.
I remember my affinity for the drop shot or Demiki rig was 8-9 years ago, going out to Thunderbird in the winter and using the same brush piles that I caught bass on, but actually being like, holy cow, I can get a 1/4 ounce crappie jig and watch it on my 2D sonar. This was way before forward-facing sonar. On my 2D sonar, mm-hmm. see the brush pile underneath the boat, drop the crappie jig in and catch them on that. So it's even 2D sonar and dropping and understanding and looking at cover and getting feedback from it and understanding what it looks like with fish on it, what a brush pile looks like without fish, being able to see what pulling fish out of cover does. It just, to me, seems like crappie give you so much more feedback and allow you to really work on your precision to where it's almost when you're then pitching a drop shot to a brush pile that has some bass around it. To me, the crappie fishing, it's almost like running with a parachute on. Like you're really learning how to be precise, and then you're like, oh, boom, I can hit that so much easier, and it's just repetition.
It absolutely is.
Yeah.
And then you also got, like I said, the predator and prey side of things, learning the environments. Like there's a good, most of the time, like everything in fishing, I call it the 90% rule. 90% of these rules are true, and then there's the 10% time that they make you look like a fool. But most of the time on a good crappie bite is not as good of a bass day. And a lot of times a good bass fishing day is not as good of a crappie day. When you get out there and you see crappie roaming everywhere, there's a reason why a little 10-inch crappie feels comfortable, because he doesn't think he's getting 8. Okay, do you understand the concept of that? But on the days that you get out there and the predators are out, you got the stripers out, you got the bass out, the crappie are hunched tighter to the cover. So you can learn real quick as you study. I mean, if a few minutes of me putting the trolling motor in the water, I can pretty much tell you what the fish's personality, and I mean the whole lake's personality, is for that day. And that really quickly gives me something to go tune in on. So you show up, do you want to know if you want to throw a moving bait or a bottom bait, for instance, and you don't have, you got to break down a lake? You put that trolling motor in and look at that fish behavior, and if there's no bait anywhere and it's all hunkered tight, it's time to possibly get tight to the cover. You know what I mean? So that way, within 2 or 3 minutes of, first thing I usually do when I drop the boat in the water, I'm playing with my electronics, and I'll drop the live scope in and stuff, and I'll look around, and it gives me an idea right away of, can I come do what I really want to do, or do I have to change already?
That's what you mean by personality based, like the person. Explain personality of the lake a little bit deeper, because that's kind of hard to wrap my mind around.
So I think as people, we try to pattern fish just by the season that they're in, or week by week, and that's where you get that, oh, you should have been here last week, right? Like you go to the crappie dock and you're talking to the guy, and they're like, oh man, you should have been here yesterday. They were smashing. What were they smashing? Oh, they were on a pink and yellow too. Like so now we're all, so we're trying to do. But the truth is, the more you understand and follow the fish through electronics, fish change hour by hour, man. Their personalities change hour by hour. And that is how getting in tune to that is what keeps you catching fish all the time. And what I mean by that is, dude, like 1 minute, they're just like humans in a way. We're happy 1 minute, we're sad the next minute we're grumpy at something, and then we're laughing again. Now all of a sudden we're really hungry. Like fish go through those same cycles throughout the day. Not necessarily maybe as much on the emotional side of things, but they are.
I was targeting really emotional fish.
It seems that way sometimes, man. Like so they don't necessarily, we talk in terms of they're on this spot, or they're on that spot, or on that spot because we're interpreting how many we caught. But that's not always true. There's times where you can throw at 100 fish school and not get bit. They're still there. They're just in a negative mood. And what triggers that mood from being into a positive mood of actually biting? Well, it can be an environmental factor. What if the bait fish are super high pressured, and so the bait fish themselves are sunk down, or there's, on the wintertime, it's a really cloudy day, they're sunk down because they're just not comfortable, because they know they've pushed to more vertical structure, because they're trying to protect themselves and stay warm and ball up. Well, the fish, now all of a sudden, a little bit of things change, maybe some wind blows or something of that nature, and then the bait come up and they start moving. Well, a big ball of gizzard shad going across a 100 bass school, it's going to fire them up. And once they get, now all of a sudden, and that window, when I say hour, it could be a 5-minute thing, it could be a 1-minute thing. Like they're going to fire right now because they got all the bait they want. It's got them stirred up. So just understanding the environmental factors of what's going on throughout the day and how that's affecting the bait fish, whether it's bluegill or whether it's crawdads or whether it's your gizzard shad from your threadfin shad and all the sand, if there's sand bass in an area, okay, striper and sand bass in certain times of the year can positively trigger bass, And sometimes a year, the bass are like, you know what? I don't want to mess with these dudes. And that's why some lakes, you always catch them on the bank all year round. Because a lot of times when there's a lot of sand bass and striper, if it's not a lot of clear water, if it's a lot of dirty water, in the wintertime, those bass just seem like they want to stay away from them. So like a keystone, for example, when it clears up, the bass will kind of do a little bit more of the suspended thing. But for the most part, because of the way that there's a lot of nutrition that's in the water and it stays dirty a lot of the time, and there's a lot of trash fish, those bass will stay. That's why it's so fun to fish keystone, because you can just stay on the rocks almost year round. And so there's just, like I said, understanding those different environmental factors. When it comes to tournament fishermen, especially the niche that we are, we gotta zone in and like now. We need to know right now what they're doing, no guesses, and that's what all this is. Interpreting all this.
So there's way more going on under the surface of the water than the average angler understands.
I think so, and I think that's the mystery and the thrill and the fun and the excitement of the whole thing. And for me, I've been an overthinker at times, way, way too much. So I've got to kind of balance that overthinking out with just following my instincts and stuff like that. But when you combine the two, when your instincts tell you what to do and then your brain tells you why it's happening, that's when you get really dangerous.
Say that again?
When your instincts and your brain connect, all right? Your instincts, an instinctual fisherman may understand, like, well, I don't know really why, but I just knew to do it, right? Okay, there are great fishermen like that, okay? And we're trying to tune into that all the time. But then when you understand why your instincts tell you to do that, why that environment's going on, when your brain actually so when those two connect, then you're dangerous.
Do you think that maybe this new world of forward-facing sonar is really effective for some anglers because it's validating their instincts? They're able to visually validate their instincts that they've had for years and years. I mean, listen, we're seeing some guys that are catching fish because they've become forward-facing sonar experts, but it's kind of like the A-rig. The same guys who caught him before caught him with the A-rig. The same guys who caught him before forward-facing sonar are catching him with forward-facing sonar, and the same guys who won offshore before side imaging are still winning offshore. Do you think that forward-facing sonar is validating a lot of fishermen's instincts and allowing them to be more effective? Not helping them, you know what I mean? They're not catching fish before because of it, but it's allowing them to say, this is what I thought was going on. Now I'm able to get a picture of what's going on, and dude, it's what I thought was going on.
Yeah, the guys that are taking it and becoming great with it, 100%. But the other thing that it's also doing is it's also telling us the myths. It's busting myths, things that we thought were going on that actually still work, by the way. We just have false impressions of why I'm getting bit when I do this thing. For instance, I'll just give an example real quick. Early on when I was using live scope up shallow, I'd pitch next to a log. I'd look, and I'd pitch next to a log. There's a fish, so I'd pitch next to a log, and I catch the fish, right? And so then now I'm like, okay, well, I don't have to even pitch. I'm just going to go around and wait until I see one. Well, I don't see a fish. I don't see a fish. I don't see a fish. So now I'm like, I'm just going to start fishing. I don't even see no fish anymore. So then I pitch up next to a log, and all of a sudden this flash from way down in the depths next to the log runs up and eats my bait. And I'm like, whoa, and I set the hook. And I'm like, wait a minute. This whole time in my mind, I used to think these fish were next to these logs. Now, granted, sometimes they are next to the logs, okay, 90% rule. But there is a majority of the time where we're getting bit, and this can happen on docks too as well, like they're on the back pole pattern, okay? But in this certain situation that I'm talking about in this log situation, is that fish was actually down on a drop. He was in the darks hiding, and he was looking up, and he was ready to ambush, and he was using that log for an ambush to pin something up against it. So that's why, like, bringing that spinnerbait so close to that log, like the Jimmy Houston style, keeping it, that's always worked for all of us. We know it works, but a lot of times mentally as fishermen in our head, we have it pictured that they're doing a certain thing, and they're not. We're getting bit the same way, so it works either way. Okay, so your instincts may say, go fish the log, stay tight. Okay, and it works. But then when you understand the environmental factor of, hey, that fish is actually living down there, he just chose to run up there and use that as an ambush point. Same thing on docks. I can't tell you how many times I've flipped to a back pole and seen that fish come from another pole on the dark side and run up and feed right there. The whole time I used to think he's living on that pole. He's living on that pole. Now that does happen, but more times than not, he's just using that pole for an ambush point for some reason. The way the light's penetrating, the way the wind's coming in, the way the bait runs in as a whole, something that's right there that they can pin against, they're just using that for an ambush spot. So why does that benefit you at all? Well, it benefits you when those fish turn negative the next hour. So now you're not fishing those same logs anymore. Now you're backing off. You're like, oh, well, they're just on that drop sitting back there. So now it allows you to put that bait and keep that bait more efficiently in an area where...
Get more of a reaction bite than a feeding bite, to where now you can put it in, move the bait, doom, they just eat it out of instinct instead of chasing it 5 feet.
And keeping your bait closer to that fish.
Biggest thing I've learned about the docks, too. Like I said, there's times where there's a fish on a pole and you pitch it and fish is right there, he swims out and eats it. But I would say the vast majority of the time, there's way more fish under there than you realize, and they're set up in an ambush point, and you pitch to a pole, a post, a cross beam, somewhere where you think the fish would be, and you see 2 or 3 of them come out after it, and one of them then commits. And you're like, man, those fish are 20, 25 feet away from where I'd actually cast. And in my mind, I'm putting it right on them, but they're sitting somewhere where they can't be molested, and you're drawing them out. It's like kind of a game of cat and mouse on that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And that's another thing that, the sonars do. All sonars, by the way. But, I think the forward shooting sonar, for the most part, takes a lot of the guesswork out. So, a lot of guys are able to use it a lot more efficiently. But you guys were using this with 2D. You can still do a 2D downside, the whole thing. But it's able to understand what mood the fish are in. You pull up on a brush pile, and that fish there's 2 or 3 fish, or forget about the brush pile. You see 2 or 3 fish, period, horizontally stacked next to each other, not vertically. And it's going to be game on, man. It creates competition. One key to triggering bites is learning how to create competition amongst a school of fish. And Kevin Van Dam's been great at that for years without forward shooting sonar. Like
triggering
how, like, he was creating competition. Like, oh, you want it? Nope, now you can't have it. Oh, you want it? Now you can't have it. That jerkbait, that choo, choo, choo. That same thing with that 5XD. Burn it, pause. Burn it, pause. Like, oh, you want it? And he's like, that cat and mouse. Well, then what happens is, like, one starts chasing it, and the other one's like, oh, what's going on with Tom over there? He's chasing something. And then, like, there's a pause, so then that Tom stops, and he's looking at it. And then all the others are like, wait, now I'm curious. So now Tom's buddy, Jerry, comes over, and Jerry's looking at it.
Tom and Jerry?
Right?
Did you plan that one out?
Yeah. So Jerry's looking at it, and Tom's like, hey, man, that's mine. Jerry's like, no, that's mine. And then, like, and so next thing you know, you got competition, and you're going to create a bite.
I mean, that happens in... that's like human nature too. Like if one person wants something, then someone else is like, well, why does that one person want it? And now I want it. And that's how you end up with like Pokemon cards worth and baby beanies worth thousands and thousands of dollars.
Yeah.
So the key word there to me that I heard through all that was speed.
Speed is the same thing that translated. You want to break speed? Yes. You want to break it down? That goes into rate of fall, right? It doesn't mean it's always fast. Okay, it can be, but it can also be the speed or rate of fall. Speed, to me, speed is horizontal, rate of fall is vertical, right? So both of those playing together, one lure's rate of fall can be really fast forward and really slow this way. I mean, so learning how to read that fish's behavior versus the speed of what you're using. Does it need to be fast? Does it need to be slow? Does it need to be high in the water column, low in the water column? Does it need to fall quickly? Or does it need to stay up higher in the water column and have a slower rate of fall? Those are really important factors. But back to studying the fish behavior, when you see fish like 2 or 3 and they're on the top of a brush pile and they're high, those fish are ready to go, man, 90% of the time.
Why is that?
That's just how they position the feed, man. It's the dinner table. When they're ready to go, they don't care about living inside that brush pile. They're on top of it. They're ready to go.
Neutral fish in the brush pile.
Neutral fish actually are either in the brush pile, but most likely they're around the brush pile. A lot of neutral fish will just go and get around the brush pile. And for years, I Carolina rigged at the Forest Wood Cup in 2018. Deep brush pile, and I was using live scope. It was really windy, but I found some fish. And one of the things that I figured out was if I missed the brush pile, I was actually getting bit. So more of the fish were actually living amongst and around the brush pile and not actually in it, which is, a factor that we use a lot more than what people talk about. Is just that they live around that thing and not in it. So Some of the biggest fish, though, when they're kind of negative, they'll live in the brush pile, in the bottom. They own that brush pile, and they'll be on the bottom. So you can still catch big fish in the bottom of a brush pile, don't get me wrong, and you can still catch them.
Mm-hmm.
But if that big one raises up to the top, he's ready to go.
Is that why it seems when you're watching tournaments, when you're fishing, it used to be like that on Grand a lot, back when I used to fish brush piles on Grand, and then went back this past year after 5 years and realized brush piles decay. Long story there. But is that why it seems like you get a lot of bites on the initial fall, because those fish are on the top of the brush pile actively looking, and they're going to meet that bait to where you cast?
Yep.
It's slack, or as soon as it gets down, it's because you're not, the fish aren't in there and you're bringing it to them. Those fish are going to your bait.
They're absolutely going up to it and eating it. They're really aggressive. Usually, listen, if you get a bite, I think everybody knows this. This is kind of common knowledge. You flip into something, and that bait goes taking off real fast. Mm-hmm. Sometimes it's a small fish that does that. But the reason why I think a small fish does that is they have a fear that somebody else is going to take that out of their mouth. They got a buddy in there, right? So when a big fish does it, it's the same thing. Like, he got something he doesn't want his buddies to have. So for me, anytime I've got a bite where you flip in next to log, and I mean, he runs 100 miles an hour, and you barely get the hook set on because he's going so fast, I get him in and get it as fast back. I want to get back in there.
Another one there.
Yeah, there's something there, right? So the same thing happens when you're throwing at a brush pile. That worm or whatever you're throwing is going down, and so this is what triggers in my mind. If I throw in there and I'm in 20-foot brush pile and it hits the water and that thing doesn't sink down 3 or 4 foot or 5 foot, 10 foot, and all of a sudden it stops or starts swimming off, to me, there's multiple fish on the top of that brush pile because one came up chasing it, right, and he hammered it. So we've always kind of known that, but one of the things that we also is kind of a myth buster with live scope is how many times we throw at that brush pile, that lure comes down, those fish are up here, and it goes down, it gets to the bottom, and that fish follows it down, and goes. Now, here's what's great about this, okay? Those fish were active enough to eat, but semi in an inactive mode. Maybe they've been pressured. They've been caught several times, right? So that's why they were like, I'm going to go check this thing out and see if it's, most of the time in those situations, you can't move it very much, right? Mm-hmm. Like, to get that bite. So it's previous to forward shooting sonar, and if we would have thought those fish are on the bottom.
Fish are on the bottom. We need to be throwing something on the bottom.
Get a heavier jig and drag it heavier and stuff like that. Well, so let's say they go in an inactive period for an hour. Well, that's where I'm able to say, you know what? Forget throwing that worm. I want something that's going to stay in the front of their face further. Mm-hmm. And so that's where I can switch to, something that's more suspending of some kind.
If you listen carefully to what John just said, it's why the dink and dunk around Bridgers Marina, Rip Rapid ramps and docks works.
Yeah, it does.
You just explained why it works. There's a lot of fish that are really high in the water column, and there are times when you can go around and, man, you pitch a drop shot, a shaky head, an eco rig, a Ned head, and it just drops 2-3 foot and stops. And you can look down the whole row and go, man, I'm going to catch one on every ambush point on this whole thing. And then there's other times where you pitch it and it goes to the bottom and you're watching them follow it or something, and you're like, man, I need to pick up the drop shot and slow down, because those fish will see it high in the water column. Like I said, if someone's been down there throwing a chatterbait or spinnerbait or something around there, just making them aware that I think something unnatural has been, or a couple have gotten plucked already, they will come up, they'll follow that thing down, and that's when I use that drop shot, because it stops, and now you still have a suspended bait in their face, and everything else is going down and going dunk and hitting the bottom, and that thing stops, and it's a foot above their head. And that's how, you can target the dink and dunk to get the 12 pounds that you figured out how to break through and catch the 15 to 17. Dude, that's really good stuff, man. That's really, really, really good analytics. How many hours would you say you have on it over the past 5? Dude, I got to have a number, because everyone says, well, how good is he? And I said, he's way better than I am with the forward-facing technology, and I feel like I'm good with it. I feel like I'm good with it. But you are in the next stratosphere with it.
Yeah, I mean, I was well into the thousands of hours by 2019. So, I don't not stare at it when I'm fishing. Very rarely. If I'm targeting individual fish, that's pretty obviously. But even when I'm just flipping, when I was on Harris Chin, I won. I still had it on. I was still glancing at it. I think Bradley made a joke about that's something you don't see very often because I had my back to it at one point in time.
Mm-hmm. Can you win without it now? If you had to fish this entire year, 9 Opens, 6 NPFLs, you think you should still finish in the top 10 in the points? 0 forward-facing technology, side imaging, and 2D. I'm asking you to be honest.
I think that it's become such an integral part of what I do to break down the environment of the fish. I would have to change the way I practiced. But did I catch them before I qualified for the Forest Wood Cup without it?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So yeah, I still think I can catch them. I just think it helps me catch them that much faster and that much more effective, and even targeting bigger fish. I would hate to have to go without it, but I still do. I mean, my boy doesn't like to have it on. He likes the old days without the electronics, and so
chunk and wine.
We go no electronics days. Like when hey, you want to go fishing? Well, he's been with me so much having to do training and stuff that he doesn't enjoy. It takes the fun out of it a little bit for him. When I'm especially training people and stuff. So I'm like, sometimes like I see it in his eyes. I'm like, hey, you want to go no electronics? And he like gets all excited. So yeah, we just go back to the Cincos and the chatterbaits and around the bank and stuff. So.
Listen, if we're not careful here, this is going to turn into a marathon show. I know you've got a ton of stuff to do, but we haven't even gotten into kind of what I wanted to talk about. But before we take a quick break, I want to get your take on this. You mentioned it, no electronics with your boys, high school fishing, massive, youth fishing, massive, college fishing, massive. Do you think that do you think you have to be careful if you are mentoring, grooming, bringing up a young angler, teaching him how to fish, not to be reliant on your technology? Is it part of the game now? Where does the building the foundation of a young angler and technology, where does that meet? And is there a danger zone there, in your opinion?
I think they can be good with their technology, but they'll never be great if they can't fish without it. They got to learn the basics. They got to learn the instincts. They got to learn the mechanical side of things. You can be good with your electronics, but you can't be great without it.
And you own an electronics company, and you're saying this.
100%. You can't be great without it. I mean, you can't be great unless you know how to fish without electronics. You can be good with your electronics. And we're talking tournament fishing here.
Right, yeah.
We're talking tournament fishing. I think that anybody that wants to just go catch big fish or target for trophy fish and stuff can use this to catch the biggest fish of their life. But in the tournament realm, you need to know the instinct side and the mechanic side of how to fish if you want to become a real great fisherman.
And then use the electronics as a tool.
Yes.
Awesome. All right, we're going to come back. We're going to talk a little bit about the NPFL. I'm going to ask you some questions about the NPFL. I mean, you are kind of there's a number of guys who had a really good year last year on that, but you are one of them, and you did win a third of the tournaments. We're going to talk about that. We're going to dive in a little bit, go into the Bassmaster Opens, and then we're going to open up the phone lines. You're going to talk about a little bit of new technology that Lowrance has. Is it out now, or they it's out?
360.
You got a nose cone, some downloads, and you basically can see 360 around your boat. So we will talk about that after the break. We are talking with John Soukup from the Bass Tank and the NPFL. We'll be back.
The Ultimate Fishing System by Lowrance. Your choice of powerful fish-finding tools, all connected. From sonar and trolling motor to navigation and networking. To fit the way you fish. All with touchscreen control from HDS Live, the heart of your system. Find more, see more, catch more with the Ultimate Fishing System by Lowrance. Upgrade to the Ultimate Fishing System and get up to $1,000 cash back.
The new Puma STS has been redesigned from the ground up. With the angler, design, function, and performance in mind, nothing on this new offering was compromised, and the only thing carried over from the previous version is the name. Based on the Soft Touch series hull that started with the flagship Jaguar, this new model is nimble and performs incredibly well at all speeds with either a 250 or 300 horsepower engine. Featuring a new 96-inch wide-body footprint, this hull measures out at 20 foot 7 inches in length. Industry-leading design coupled with tournament-winning performance. The Puma STS from Basscat. Feel the rush.
Elite Series Pro Daryl Gleason here. My Pro Guide batteries keep me going on those long tournament days and long practice days. Always plenty of juice, never fail. The best part about Pro Guide batteries, it's the people behind the company. They have over 40 years experience in the battery business, keeping all of us fishermen out on the water longer, catching more fish. Check them out at ProGuideBatteries.com.
What's up, Bass Talk Live fans? Brandon Polnick here. And ever since I won a couple Bassmaster Elite Series events on X-Zone Lures, I've been getting a bunch of questions of what makes them so special and different. And really, the truth is, it's in the details. The little details, things like no cheap fillers in their plastic. That gives you more lifelike action, more realistic and vibrant colors. But don't just take my word for it. Go to www.xzonelures.com and check them out for yourself.
I've made my living on the water for over 20 years.
For 14 years.
For over 23 years.
I've worn a bunch of different clothing brands over the years.
Some companies big. And some companies small.
All of them said they were making clothing for us. But none of them knew us.
None of them were us. Except for one.
Except for one.
Except one.
AFCO.
AFCO.
AFCO. AFCO. Fishing isn't part of us. It is us.
The KVD 100 jerkbait. 15 different colors. A perfect combination of roll, wiggle, and flash. Increased castability. 3D eyes. Premium black nickel hooks. KVD. Tie one on. Striking lures.
Combining one of the most popular hook styles with Gamakatsu's beefier Superline offering, the Gamakatsu Superline Offset Round Bend delivers the strength necessary to target big fish in heavy cover. Well suited for braided line and heavier fluorocarbon, the Gamakatsu Superline Offset Round Bend is built using stronger Superline wire that allows anglers to easily fish a finesse worm around heavy cover. The round bend offers a larger bite area, perfect for any worm presentation, while increasing your hookup ratios. The newly enhanced Z-Bend holds your plastics on the hook longer, reducing the number of pull-offs and reducing damage to plastics. Available in 2/0, 3/0, 4/0, and 5/0, this is the most durable worm hook, designed for heavier lines that hold your bait on longer.
Preparation is key to success. And that preparation starts well before you ever hit the water. You're only as strong as your connection to the fish, and your line is that critical connection. Confidence in your line every minute of every day on the water is a necessity, and failure, it's not an option. Sunline makes the fluorocarbon, nylon, and braided lines to give you the strength to guarantee your confidence.
We are back, BTO, on a Monday, January 24th, and a really good opening segment with John Soukup of the Bass Tank, kind of diving in depth on a number of topics. Dude, there's a lot more going on underneath the water than we realize. Like sometimes I'm like, man, we give these fish way too much credit. And then other times I'm like, man, we don't give these fish nearly enough credit. It's all just instinctual, right? I mean, they're just reacting to their environment, and it's our job to understand the environment so we know how those fish react. Is that a fair assessment?
I think it's just like raising a wife.
You gotta be careful here, man.
I think fishing makes you a better husband. You need to know when to cast that lure and when not to.
Okay, we'll go with that. Let's get into the performance aspect side of this, dude. You did really well on the inaugural season of the NPFL. It seemed like it gained a lot of momentum last year. You won, 2 of the first 3 events? Mm-hmm. There were some guys like the Keith Carsons and you and just a number of guys who were kind of like, man, these guys can really hold their own on it. And then there was no championship, and then it was kind of revamped, and there really wasn't much news out. And this is the Cliff Notes version that I'm just saying exactly what I know. And then it was, hey man, we're kind of regrouping, we're rebranding, no championship, and we're back with a new schedule though, and we're moving forward to 2022. And it seems like a lot of the guys are back. The 2022 season kicks off in February on Lake Cumberland, and then goes throughout the year all the way through November with stops at Hartwell, Watts Bar, Saginaw Bay, Sandusky Bay, and the Kissimmee chain of lakes in November. We haven't really had anybody on to talk about it, and I don't know if you're in a position to, but like, what the heck happened, and how do we get to the point where, hey man, we're excited for the 2022 season? Because I imagine this thing continuing was big for careers like you, who's kind of made your name in the NPFL on the tournament side.
Yeah, it was a swift kick. It wasn't a good feeling at all. But I am an entrepreneur. I've started several businesses, and I failed my way to the top. I failed and I failed and I failed, and we keep trying, and we keep trying, and we keep trying, and that's what the NPFL is. It's a gigantic investment. It's a dream that a few individuals had to bring a different style of tournament, a different approach to the tournament angler, which was more of a care and concern for the tournament angler, if you will. And here's the deal: a lot of times, care and concern doesn't put money in the bank, and that's a little bit of what happened. Like, we did have a great season. The production value was huge. That production value cost money, and when it comes down to it, they had an investor back out, and they didn't have the sponsor dollars they needed to step up throughout the year. And so it put them in a bind, and the cancellation of the championship was determined to be able to make it through. All anglers, the 25, the money was divided evenly, and $10,000 was distributed to those anglers that made the championship. From that point, they kind of went into a rush. A new investor stepped up. The new investor has new rules of how they want to operate on some things to maintain, which some of those rules were, a 3 to 6 year business plan to make sure that they could sustain everything without sponsorships, which, it's just needed. That money's needed. And so, part of that was they had to pull away a championship for 22. And that is, the championship will occur when and if a sponsor steps up to sponsor the championship. So that is kind of where it's at now. That caused a little bit of turmoil. I think majority of, when I say majority, I'd say 90%. We have a 90% return rate or so. Maybe it's lower at 80, but I don't think that was all because of that championship. Some guys just couldn't financially pull it again. But last count, I know we're close to 120 that are contracts are signed and their dues are paid. So we're going into 22. You're right. It was an amazing. It would be unfair. Life's unfair though, but it would be unfair for me to have gained so much personally out of the NPFL to see the thing collapse and the ownership's taken on the huge debt that occurred, for me to not try to come back and support them in the 22 season, because you're right. It just did a lot for me. Now I think they're going to have to restructure. I don't think we're going to be able to have 10 live cameras. I think we're going to be somewhere around 6 live cameras. I don't know if they've actually.
Still a lot.
It's still a lot, and it's still the same people. I don't know this as a fact at all. I'm under the impression Dudley's not going to be back next year. I don't think it had I don't know that it had anything financially. I think there was overlap in schedule or something of that nature. At least that's what's being discussed. So there is no bad blood amongst the ownership group and the anglers. That's all been taken care of and cleaned up. Not that there wasn't frustration and there wasn't some fingers pointed and stuff. It was all done internally, openly, very professionally. And listen, man, we're excited to go into 2022 and try to do it again.
Personally, what did you notice about your brand and your kind of growth in notoriety? Fans, I guess, just from fishing the NPFL. Was there a noticeable uptick of it as the year went on and you started racking up wins?
Yeah, I mean, the second win happened fast. And I did notice it. I noticed it, though, when I went to the Bassmaster Classic right after my second win. Of course, this guy named KVD had his win like a week later. So it was like he kind of took a little bit of my thunder, but no, it was cool. You were there at the Classic, too. Like, the fishing world took
I think KVD owns the Thunder
He
and the Lightning.
He is the Thunder, man.
What is that? Who is it? Is that Zeus, the god of?
Yeah.
He determines when it thunders and lightnings.
Yeah. So it's pretty cool, you know. You have little things in your in time that you remember events that occur, and you know, my win came in the same week that his win, so I'll kind of always remember that his win because it came close to mine. But you know, at the Classic, yeah, people knew. They knew what the NPFL was. They knew that I'd won, and so yes, there was a growth. Now, as far as the sponsorship and stuff like that, growth, that is hit and miss very strong. The NPFL line, it seems like you either got big time pro supporters or you got the naysayers, if you will. And I'm not necessarily saying naysayers that they just against the NPFL, but as far as like someone decided to put sponsorship dollars into the brand or into the some people just don't feel like it brings the notoriety that needs to as of yet. So you got a mixed bag on that. It's very weird because I can go into a room and people are all fired up and excited, and I get to talk, and I can go in the next room over, and people are just like, they really don't care at all. So that's you know, that's probably the way it's going to be before this thing levels out here.
And then you're signed up for all 9 opens currently, right? I mean, the only 2 guys that I can think of, and I'm sorry if I missed someone, it's just I know these guys with Joel Willard and Greg Mansfield, who fished both the full NPFL last year and the all 9 opens last year. And dude, like by the end, I think that schedule was taking a toll on both of them.
Yeah, you could see it in Greg's eyes, like he was really, really exhausted. And I would love to say I'm going to fish all 9 opens. I've got it on the schedule, but for the most part, I'm going to have to do this more like a chess move, kind of like a Bradley Hallman deal did last year, and really see how my finishes start happening and racking up on the NPFL and in the opens. Because, you know, with the opens, you got 4 different things, 5 different things you're working towards, right? You're either wanting to get in the top in the central points, the southerns, or the northerns, so there's 3, or the overall, so there's 4, and then you're trying to qualify for the Classic
and win,
or win one.
Yeah.
So, you know, if I were to win an event, I mean, I'm going to do everything and move everything.
Oh yeah, you have to fish the other 2 because then you're in the.
Yeah, you have to. So that will detect it. And you know, depending on points, if you come out and have a couple good events in the first couple southerns, you're going to stick with that 3rd southern. If I go out and bomb one, then I'll probably pull away from that opportunity to fish all of them. You know, if I bomb a northern, I'm not going to go chase the next 2 northerns.
But if you make the elites, you're in. Like you're fishing it.
Oh yeah. Yeah, who wouldn't say that at this point in time in life?
Yeah, it's insane that. Does it blow your mind how many guys are wanting to get in these opens? Like there's 70, 80, 90 on a wait list. You've got 83 that are fishing all 3 divisions. It just blows my mind at the amount of interest and amount of guys who are willing to drop $10,000 to $15,000 per division.
A great thing for the industry to have that much demand. Demand is always good for business, and that's what we need. I mean, the Bass Tank needs it. You need it personally. I need it personally. BTL needs it. We need demand. We need people wanting it. And like you saw about the competition side of things, the more guys are wanting in on things like that, it's going to create some things. People are going to be spending some money. They're going to be spending time. They're going to be spending resources. They're going to be studying. So like you get a little YouTuber, a little high school guy that starts a YouTube on how to tie a knot. There's going to be more adults watching that thing, which is going to give him an opportunity to get so it brings brings all ships up kind of situation. So from what I understand, and I can't say that I've heard this from the opens guys themselves, but from people that I respect with the proper information, once it went through like that pre-enrollment, some of those there was already a waiting list.
Yeah, it was nuts.
So, yeah.
You mentioned the sponsorship. I can't go anywhere without seeing a Bass Tank wrap boat. How many Bass Tank boats you got out there, man?
About 333. And we just drive them all night long. I mean, it's actually kind of our game plan.
No, but you've got it across crappie and bass and YouTube. And I mean, you sponsor a wide variety of anglers across a wide variety of species.
Yeah, we need a walleye guy.
You don't have a walleye guy?
No, it'd be nice.
What are you looking for in a walleye guy?
The same thing you'd want in a bass guy, right?
What do you look for when you've got a guy? What you've got? Brad's got it. Is Kevin Rogers wrapped with bass tank? I know there's a number of different bass tank guys out there. Does Johnny still have a bass tank wrap?
Yeah.
Going into this year.
Yeah,
Sean Goodwin is Sean Goodwin. He's brand new. He's fishing the.
Right. So you gotta balance the different things, right?
Okay.
So there are some big name factors, like a Jason Christie, for instance. He's not running a bass tank wrap, obviously. But when you look at a name like that,
but he's still part of it.
100%.
But he just doesn't have the.
Yeah. So
I would imagine that's some real estate to get. Like a title sponsor for Jason would
that,
probably.
That is, that level. That's exactly what it is. Like location, real estate, right? Yeah. Well, that's what that is. So there's some just brand recognition that comes along with the name and things like that. Listen, everybody that's fishing a BFL, nobody in the BFL has that brand recognition. Very few, and I've been told this myself too on my own personal stuff. Very few elite guys have that. Very few. Like there's just a very few people that have that power. So, but most guys looking for sponsorship think that that's what they have because they've won an event or something. That's just not how it works. So then, secondarily, it comes down to moving product, making sales. So there is also some people that we work with because of their integrity. That brings something to the name of the company and what we stand for and what we represent. For instance, we were able to sign with Mark Rose.
I just saw that. He was just in the studio.
He was actually with us last year as well, but we had done it post him already getting set up or anything like that. So it was more a little bit of kind of a starter year. But so this year, he's working. So obviously, what Mark represents and things of that nature is something that, we want to be behind and support as well. And so there's some of those factors in. But then when you get to like a Sean situation, Sean to me was a lot like Bradley. The decision to work with Bradley and Sean were they identical to me. One, they were good old boy Okies, right? That's who we are. But their name, anybody that knows them, their name has been established forever. Yeah. And they've been the same guy forever. And which is a great guy, by the way. And they got a good report of who they are and what they represent. And if Bradley says, they're on a spinnerbait, they're on a spinnerbait. If Sean says they're on a jerkbait, they're on a jerkbait. And people believe in the value of their word carries and goes a long, long ways.
I remember when this started, I would get a call every now and then. It'd be like, "Hey man, you know that the guys at the Bass Tank, right?" I'm like, "Yeah." You think you could kind of get me hooked up? I think they do. I want to get my stuff installed. And I remember I'd call and it'd be like, "Dude, I got like an Elite Series Pro or Pro Circuit guy," and it was like a big deal. Now, I mean, dude, you've got a lot of guys that fish at the top level that want to or that do drive a long way just to get their boat in the shop and have you and Darren and those guys work on it.
Well, let's just clear that up. Darren works on them, and Skyler, and then Scott does the engineering to help. Okay. And I pretty much just take pictures.
Okay, so who is it? Darren's the guy who's and Darren and Skyler are the guys who are in the shop that are actually doing the wiring, the install, the drilling, the cutting, all that stuff.
Yep, they're the perfectionists.
Okay, and then
you got Scott, who's my business partner, who's the engineer behind the back. He's an engineer.
Okay.
So why is that important? Well, with the power, you guys go back to Matt Looney's show with you. Like the power supply is so great and grand now. All these boats are different. Everybody's custom situation. Some guys want 6 different graphs. Some guys, plus they're running just there's so much that can be on a boat. It's all becomes custom.
Okay. So he's the guy saying this is how it can get done.
Right. Or if there's an issue,
that troubleshoots it.
Troubleshoots. Why is this issue? Is it from the factory? Is it from the where is this and why is this going on?
Okay.
Yeah.
And then Zeke's
just the hype man. I really don't know what he does anymore. He just comes in and hypes. He's that guy off of Oh, I forgot that movie, Nacho Libre, where he's like, that one wrestler's with him. He's like, so-and-so is the best. So-and-so is the best. Like,
No, but Zeke knows his stuff, man.
oh, yeah, absolutely. So Zeke and then Austin. You've known Austin forever.
Yeah, and you have a number of like kind of younger anglers from the area who've gotten in that you've hired, that you've brought in. I mean, they're full-time employees now.
Oh, yeah. Zeke and Austin, there are sales reps that also do for our customer support, tech support situation. But a lot of that is they're on the water a lot. They know the technology really well. So if someone's calling to spend money, whether it's $100 or $10,000 with us, it's important to me that it's spent on the right product for them, and no upsells, so they can qualify them through a bunch of qualifying questions about what kind of fish they're targeting, what kind of boats they have, whether their goals with their all that, and then kind of get narrowed down and say, okay, hey, this one looks like it's the best for you.
Okay.
Like, for instance, let's say a guy calls and he says, hey, man, I'm thinking about getting 360 on my boat.
That's right where I was going with this. So.
And Zeke would say, well, sir, what do you have on your boat now? Well, I've got, HTS Lives. Well, did you know that you can get 360 on your Ghost trolling motor? Instead of saying, hey, let's spend $3,000 and upgrade you in a Humminbird package, why don't we just get 360 on your Lowrance?
So what is the deal with that? I've seen a lot of the videos come out with it. I saw Zeke, and I called you and was like, hey, man, can you talk about the Ghost 360?
Yeah, it's cool. You know what? To me, it's like one of those branding things, like what's more dangerous than a ghost? It's like a Ghost 360, like a 360 ghost.
Ghost that's everywhere.
So, it's a little bit of Lowrance's answer to the 360. I'm going to say it's step one of potentially what's coming down the pipe for him. Okay. So to be a little bit fair about that, but basically the transducer that comes in, it has to be one of the Ghosts. So you have to have a Ghost trolling motor.
You have to have a Ghost trolling motor, and then you either have to have a carbon and a lead FS or an HDS Live.
Correct. So Scott tells me this is the easy way to break it down. If you can run active target right now, then you can do the Ghost 360.
Okay.
What has to happen is the cone inside needs to be upgraded inside of the trolling motor. Okay. The transducer inside the cone of the trolling motor. So it's I can't quote the price. I'm going to say it's a $250, $300, the active imaging 3-in-1.
So it's not thousands of dollars to get this.
No, it's not. So that gets updated. You bring it into the bass tank. They update it. We install it. Then you go through an update process.
It's free software on the Lowrance site. It's where you download your updates that I am a couple behind on, and I'm always
so your trolling motor in your unit get updated.
Okay.
And then you'll have an icon pop up on your screen that just like a live scope would or anything of that nature. And you click on that icon, and then you tell it to scan, and it goes into scan mode. Now, I haven't been out and been able to play it with it myself. I wasn't. My wife was having
a baby.
And
it's been out. It literally like came out like the day your kid was born.
Yeah, I was trying to do business, and then I was like, oh, look at this. Oh, a baby. I better put the phone up. So,
can you wait 30 minutes? I'm learning about the Ghost 360.
The trolling motor it uses the crystals that are inside the existing crystals inside that transducer, and then the trolling motor will scan, to make it get the imaging, the side imaging. All right. So when it does that, you cannot use. So this is the difference, where on your Humminbird you could put it in spot lock. You can't put the trolling motor in spot lock and be able to use the Ghost 360. And for the most part, you can't even troll down the bank to use it either. Okay. So you're gonna have to be in a calm area, and so that's why I think it's kind of phase one, step one, but it's really, really cool.
Yeah.
Because
right circumstance, right conditions.
What's next?
You're
grass mat fishing. You know, you're on Kanawha, and you're wanting to throw those traps in the grass, and you don't know exactly where that grass is at. You don't want to fire up the motor and idle across and burn every fish that's there. So
And a lot of other good deals also going on at the Bass Tank right now. I see you guys pop stuff up on your social media all the time. So best place to go look at that is the Bass Tank Facebook page.
TheBassTank.com is the best way. Obviously, you can go on our YouTube, you can go on Facebook, you can go on Instagram, and we try to run all the deals that we can on our social media. But the way the algorithms are, you don't always see that stuff. So probably just on the website, TheBassTank.com.
I want to get to some calls. I want to take a couple calls. Last time we did a call-in show, you did an incredible job of fielding that. We got a lot of live viewers. But before we get to that, I want to talk about your YouTube page. Because as if you didn't have enough going on, you went out and would you hire Oklahoma's worst angler? Or you're working with him in conjunction or something and a bunch of other people, and you're doing high-end production videos on the hookup with Soukup.
The hookup with Soukup. I mean, I got tagged with the hookup last year in the NPFL, thanks to Luke Duncan, and which is really cool. Nickname, I like it, And so, yeah, we did the hookup with Soukup on YouTube, and I think we are 6 shows in now. We're going to be doing 4 to 6 a month. There are going to be a lot of how-tos on there. There's going to be a lot of cool fishing, a lot of different stuff. We're just going to have fun with it. You guys, so far, the feedback's been awesome. People are loving the things. I think we did the last show that we did some spoon fishing, did some things with live sonar that other people really don't know that you can do or can do.
A lot of the stuff that you talked about in the first segment of the show, you can kind of actualize some of the stuff through the videos. He doesn't. It's 100%. Really interesting stuff, like really good stuff out there. So the easiest way that I found it, like if you just type in John Soukup, all sorts of different stuff. You got bass tank, you got wired to fish stuff, you've got outdoor, you've got tons of stuff that pulls up. But if you just type in the hookup with Soukup, boom, it pops up there. Yeah. So trying to grow that channel, really good content. That's expensive to do and takes a lot of time too. I don't think people understand how much goes into it. They just see all these channels that are out there. But man, that's like a whole nother tournament season.
Yeah, it is. And my first challenge is going to be next week, filming the open footage.
Did you find someone, or are you still looking for someone?
No, I'm gonna do my own. I've been practicing the chesty thing. I've been doing all.
You're going chesty?
Yeah.
Have you ever done that in a tournament?
No. So I will tell you this: if you see this, that's serious, John. Like getting ready to get after it. So I've been fishing a lot with it, so I'm comfortable. Fishing in general. Now the irritant side, it will come off, but I'll have the other one running as well. And then, on the open stuff, definitely the challenge is going to be like getting the B-roll stuff, like the drone shots and the different stuff like that. I'm not going to go, as of right now, myself personally, be able to take those. I'm not going to put that on me yet. All but right. The NPFL side, we'll have that on the NPFL. We've got that put together. So.
You want to take a couple calls?
Yeah, let's do this.
All right.
Softballs.
The Sunline Hotline.
That's cool. Look at that scrolling down there.
Yeah, scrolls up. Is if you have a question for John Soukup with the bass tank, the Sunline Hotline number is 405-253-5543. Once again, get your questions in, and we're going to take one more final break, and then we are going to come back with Sunline Hotline once again. 405-253-5543. And we will be back with some questions for John Soukup of the Bass Tank.
One of the cool new jig heads that Big Bite came out with is the ram head, named after the golden ram cliff perch, and it's really designed specifically for the Ned style. But one of the cool things about this jig head and the Gamakatsu hook that Big Bite put in it, especially in the 3/16 ounce model, is how versatile it is. You can actually rig it 4 or 5 different ways instead of having to go through a myriad of different jig heads. This will get the job done. A bunch of different jig heads. You can actually very efficiently get the job done with the new ram head. The Spro Little John crankbait has been around for almost 15 years, and it is one of my go-to crankbaits whenever I need a fish in the boat, so you can never have enough new colors. That's why Spro's coming out with a handful of new colors, including Pearl Shad, which has this bleached out white look, but it's got this pearlescent, really, really pretty. We've got Copper Shad, which looks amazing in the water. It's got that purple flake on the back, really, really pops in the water. And then if you want some real pop, we've got Sparkle Shad, nothing but sparkles all over this thing. And then last but not least, we've got the matte Sexy Shad, just a really different looking color for a crankbait. So you want to give them a little different look, that matte Sexy Shad is definitely the one to go with. All these colors are available in the original Little John and the MD.
So, you're looking to buy fishing electronics, huh? Are you also looking for true experts to help guide you through it? Well, at the Bass Tank, you've come to the right place. We are live forward-facing sonar pioneers with thousands of hours spent learning through winning trophies, cashing checks, and just having fun. Whatever brand you need, we have it. We offer free shipping, and we have 2 financing options available. Our experts are here to help you. Call us today or visit thebasstank.com.
Hey guys, Major League Fishing Pro Jacob Wheeler here with my new Signature Series line of rods with Duck It Fishing. We have my 7.2 cranking rod right here. Crankbaits can be very fickle, and having the right, having a lot of tip can be too much, and having not enough tip can, lose a lot of fish. So you really got to be careful. If there's 1 or 2 techniques that I'm really adamant about having the perfect action as a crankbait, especially like a square bill, a DT6, those medium running crankbaits in the springtime when those fish's mouth are pretty tough. That's when I'm really on top of having my actions just perfect.
Welcome back to BTL on a Monday. We are taking calls with John Soukup of the Bass Tank. And let's just get right into it and go to our first caller. Hi, you're on with John from the Bass Tank. Who are we talking with?
Hey, this is Doug. Can you guys hear me?
We got you. Can you hear us?
Yes, awesome, sweet. So I'm from Ohio. Just bought a new Garmin force trolling motor, but I still have HDS 12s. Do they make an adapter cable for that trolling motor? If not, what is your best opinion on I wouldn't say budget, but a very useful good? I don't want to go out and spend $4 or $5 grand on a unit. I just want to be able to use, optimize the Garmin electronics. So if you could give me some guidance or something, that'd be cool. Appreciate it. Also, good luck this year, Matt and John. Hopefully it all works out for you.
Thanks for your question.
Yeah, you're going to be able to utilize the 2D, but you won't be able to utilize the side and down imaging. So they're basically going to where you'd want to either go with the Ghost trolling motor for that, or like you said, they're spending a lot of money. You could get we actually have a UHD 93 deal at the Bass Tank right now for $699, and you can go to thebasstank.com. That's a 9-inch unit that will be compatible with that transducer inside that Garmin Force trolling motor, and you'll be able to pick up your side, your down, and your traditional sonar off of that. And you actually keep one of your lives up front and use it for your mapping and
waypoint management systems. Anything that you want to do with that, you could even use your 2D for that.
You can, but I mean, if you had that 93 up there, it wouldn't work. It wouldn't work. So,
all right. The Sunline Hotline number is 405 253 5543. If you have a question for John from the Bass Tank, also I will slide back over to the comments here. If you are not able to call in to the Sunline Hotline show and just want to have a comment or question for John, feel free to ask them there. Do you carry backup units with you just in case? As much as you rely on your technology, are you a guy who has like extra stuff in the boat?
Well, I've got two 12s at the console, and I got 116 up front. And I think that something catastrophic would happen. I'd have to get it stolen or something. If I had one of my units, like Winnebago last year, my 16-inch unit delaminated. So I fished that event without electronics, which I got 11th in. So see, but so if something were to happen, I could put that 12 up front. I could move one of my 12 from my dash and move it up there. Or if one of my dash units went out, I have another one that's running. So that's how I do. But I do have 2 live scopes in the boat on. I got 2 black boxes, and I got a spare transducer inside the boat. So
there was a question earlier about the I'm going to see if I can find it. In your opinion, what are the options if you want to put a live side or forward-facing sonar on is it called a gimbal mount? One of those?
Pole?
Yeah.
Pole?
What are the options of mounting it to where you can turn it independently of the trolling motor? I know that there were a ton of options beforehand, but I don't know. Is there one that's kind of, in your opinion?
We have several. We have 2 or 3 different ones, and really that's one of those almost make a phone call to us situation. It depends a lot on what your system is that you're using, but you can see we have 2 or 3 different pole options in the Bass Tank. Beatdown Mounts has one that we've been working a lot with. Bruce City has a pole that we work a lot with. Sea Light has a pole that we work a lot with. So depend, and then there's always that turret system that you're going to see a lot out, which is a foot control deal. I think Jason's running one this year. It doesn't work for me personally, so I get a lot of questions about why I still run it on my my trolling motor. So Jason's actually going to be running one on his trolling motor and one on the turret, so he can do either or.
All right, Frankie. There he is right there. Wants to know, John, is it a disadvantaging running active target off of a carbon versus an HDS Live?
I think your HDS Live is going to pick up information a little bit faster and going to be a little bit clearer. So the disadvantage would be not having forward shooting sonar. So if someone had a carbon and they were like, I'm going to wait until I get an HDS Live, I'd say no. Get your active target running first. But if you have a choice, then the HDS Live is going to be a better option.
All right. Sunline Hotline, if you have a question for John Soukup of the Bass Tank, 405-253-5543 on the Sunline Hotline. Let's go back to the Sunline Hotline. Hey, you're on with John. Who are we talking with? Hello.
Hey, good morning. How are you?
Good. Who are we talking with?
This is Dustin from Nashville.
What's up,
love
Dustin?
the show. Big fan of Mr. Soukup and yourself, Matt, and I appreciate you having me on. I have an aviation background and fairly new to fishing. I could be considered a COVID fisherman, if you will.
Okay.
And, I have a boat with Humminbird products, and as I look to upgrade, I really enjoy the fact that it's easy to know exactly what I'm getting with Humminbird products because, a Helix 9, a Helix 10, a Helix 12, or a Solix series, it's pretty easy to know what size those screens are. I get a little frustrated with the Garmin products and their naming convention. Is there some quick way to break down what you're getting as far as the size of the screen and the technologies in those screens by looking at the naming conventions of those products?
Yeah, we can break that down pretty quickly. I understand what you're saying. So basically, you're going to have 2 different families of units in the Garmin, and then they're also going to be broke down in subcategories based on whether they have mapping or no mapping, like base mapping, or they actually have mapping included. So that's going to be where a little confusion where you got like a 93 versus a 94 is actually coastal mapping versus inland mapping. So anything that basically starts with a 9 is going to be a 9-inch. Anything that starts with a 10 will be a 10-inch. Anything that starts with a 12 will be 12-inch in the EcoMaps family. Now, when you go over to the GPS Maps family, which those 2 different family units are, as Garmin will say, the EcoMaps is more of an inshore, and the GPS Maps family is more offshore. But I use the GPS Maps family, the 8600 series, because they have a faster processor, which I believe helps for me personally. So those units, the size of the units is actually on the back 2 digits. So for instance, 8616, 8612, 8610 designates what the size of the units are. Now, with that being said, Garmin also has units that are not sonar compatible. So you got to be careful if you're wanting to use down side imaging and traditional sonar, that you pick a unit that has the XSV features. So for instance, a lot of guys, they want just a live scope unit. So a Garmin GPS Maps 1022 is a 10-inch screen that does not have any of the functioning of downside and traditional sonar. However, if you got a 1022 XSV, it would have that sonar. So,
and that's why you take it to the Bass Tank.
Yeah, a quick phone call, we can help. But this is definitely was a little confusing part. I understand what he's. I don't remember. I didn't hear what he said what his background was, but I do understand.
Aviation.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
So he's probably good with numbers.
And he probably likes Garmin products already because Garmin's big time in aviation.
Yeah.
So I bet you they have even worse.
Imagine all the numbers.
So trying to think about like a 106 SV, versus a 102. This is the EcoMaps side of the family. These units, the 10 is the 10-inch, and the 6 means it has built-in mapping, and the 10 and the 2 means it does not have built-in mapping. So,
like rod actions and stuff too, a lot,
right.
just for the graphs. All right, hopefully that works. Hey, sorry, you're on with Matt and John on a Monday, BTL. Who are we talking with?
Hey, this is Chris in Colorado.
What's up, Chris?
Fungi. How you doing?
Good. How are you doing?
Very good.
You got a question for John?
Just a quick electronics question for John. I got a 93 SV up front with live scope and got it all wired with the big gauge wire, and everything works great most of the time, but about every other trip I get this where the pixels get really big and the picture on the live scope gets distorted, and then it snaps back, and I don't know if it's why it's certain trips, if my batteries are getting low or what.
Yeah, so troubleshooting just over a phone call is a little bit difficult, but I'd say the things that you need to be aware of is big gauge wire is a part of the solution, but it's not the whole solution. So you need to make sure that everything is installed correctly. Your connections. There should be voltage on your unit that you can track to see if you're maintaining your voltage. But also, what can happen is you always need to make sure you got the latest updates. Both on your black box of your live scope and on your unit, and they're compatible with each other, because if they're not, they can kind of cause some confusion. So also, if you do have an issue, let's say with a warranty issue, that's the first thing they're going to ask you to do is do the latest update. So that's something that you'll want to make sure that it's done before you start tracking and tracing too much down the trails of what could be possibly wrong.
Awesome. Let's go to the instant feedback for a couple questions. Terry would like to know, John, are you running your electronics on a separate battery?
Terry, I do run my electronics on a separate battery. However, I have an express boat that has limited battery storage in the back. So I actually have two 36-volt trolling motors running in parallel, and I have two 12 volts running in parallel. They actually do my starting, and they do all my electronics. And so I've been doing that for a couple years, and I've got away with it as far as I don't have any interference. Everything else in my system works correctly, and it allows me to have power for days. I have my power pole charge connected into it, so it's charging a lot of times. I actually took that same system for 3 or 4 days intentionally without charging it to see what would happen, and I was able to get away with that. So.
One more question there. Bass and Furious would like to.
I love this one.
He would like you to dive into the mounting issue with staring down at the graph and hurting your neck all day. And I know that is also a Wild West kind of frontier as far as trying to get mounts that you can get that are more neck friendly. So what are your options now?
Well, Beatdown's got a mount. It's called the Ultimate, and it's really taller. I use the Ultimate Shorty, and I don't know how far it actually extends, but it extends at least 3 foot in the air. It's at waist level for me, so I use that one during the wintertime exclusively. The only time that may become an issue for me. Now, I only have one unit. It's very important that I say that because you can get a double mount where you have 2 units running at the same time, but at some point, to me, there becomes a visibility issue there. So, for it to be that high in the way. So now it extends down and up, by the way. So like when I take off, I can lower it down.
Manually, you go and lower it. Okay.
Yeah. But there may be a time like we get diving into the willows that I don't want that.
Does that stuff get in the way while you're fit? Like, so I was out with Kevin Rogers, and it was literally like sitting at a computer desk. Because he had like a 16-inch, and it was like at your chest level, and I was like, oh, this is going to be interesting. But it never got in the way, but we were also just crappie fishing.
Yeah, I have not had it get in the way yet. I was very surprised.
And you use it bass fishing raised, in tournaments.
Oh yeah, 100%. You'll see. I mean, all those videos that you'll see on YouTube, I've got it on. I'm using it. It does help. I mean, I touch my screen. Someday we need to do the screen count. I touch it. Take some.
How much time you mess with it?
Exactly. I mean, I touch it all the time, so it's nice to not have to bend over. I can just tap, and No.
All right. Let's take a couple more calls, and then we'll wrap up the show. I appreciate you coming in studio. I know you have a lot on your plate to get ready to leave for the first Bassmaster Open on the Kissimmee chain. The Sunline Hotline, once again, is 405-253-5543. Let's take two more calls, and then we will wrap up BTL on a Monday. We have a big week coming up. Tomorrow, the one and only Chris Zaldane will join us live for an interview, maybe some major announcements from Chris on some major changes with him going into the 2022 season.
He's going to quit throwing swim baits.
Yeah,
he's going to announce it on the show.
That'll never happen. So
he's decided.
Big show tomorrow to tune in with Chris. All right, let's go back to the Sunline Hotline. Hey, you're on with Matt and John. Who are we talking with? Hello.
Are you there?
Yep, we got you. You're on with Matt and John. Who are we talking with?
Hey, guys. Just wanted to call in, see how everything's going. Wish you guys good luck this year, obviously. Me and my dad have got a new Phoenix. He's got live scope on it. We're fishing Table Rock, Beaver Lake, stuff like that, real hard bottom. It gets a lot of clutter, and probably within like 30 to 40 feet, you can't see a whole lot out in front of you. I've heard that you can click. I've got it in forward mode. I've heard you can click that transducer up, and it'll kind of get away from that clutter and adjust the angle, and you can see more out in front of you because it's such a hard bottom. Is that true, or what else can I do?
Thanks for the question.
Yeah. So you need to go into your advanced settings, and your TVG needs to be off. Your color gain, you can adjust that up and down. 30 to 40 foot, if there's a lot of clutter, clicking it up a notch can help, but it's not going to solve your issue. Most likely, it seems like you're probably fishing steeper banks that may or may not have trees on it, and you're getting a lot of return off the side of that transducer. And in those situations, you really got to range in. Don't range far out. You need to bring that range into more like the 45 range to 60 max. And then
I'm having a hard time hearing y'all, but man, I'll listen back on the YouTube for what you got to say. But hey, guys, good luck this year, and I'll be following both of y'all, and of course Brad Home, and I'm a big fan of y'all's show. But hey, man, I appreciate y'all taking the time and answering questions. Y'all have a good day.
Thank you.
The other thing they need to do is make sure it's updated, and there's a ghost reject. I can keep mine on low. There's a low, medium, high. I haven't brought it above low, and that will help clear some things out. Now, listen, if you have been using at any time twist ties on your cables, you could possibly have damaged the live scope cable that can be causing some interference, and so that's a major issue. That's why we're using the bass.
Yeah, you're not a fan of twist ties for anything.
No twist ties, unless you're trying to kidnap somebody, because they hold.
But seriously, I thought about that too. Like, I mean, I was a zip tie guy. Like, I was like, oh, let's see how many zip ties I can put down these cords. And then when I started going to you guys, it was like the first thing Eric did was like cut the zip ties and be like, what's your problem?
Yeah, man. So think about it. You got your wire, okay, and then you got insulation around that wire, and then you just got the shielding around that protects it. So as you pinch that, you pinch through that insulation, you pinch into your wires. It's like as if you were to pinch a vein.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, you would never do that.
It's like cutting off the blood supply like a tourniquet.
Correct. And then there's some information that some of those carry too that could completely get kind of pinched through and cut through. So if you've done that, you could have damaged your live scope transducer, which could definitely cause that same image that he's talking about. So there is one other setting my brain is going blank on.
No, that's fine. We've been at this for an hour and 43 minutes. You think about it. Let us know. Otherwise, we'll take one more call from the Sunline Hotline, 405-253-5543, before we wrap up the last... Is it the last Monday? No, there's another Monday in January, I think, isn't there?
Yeah.
Yeah, the 31st. We'll be in Florida by then. Yes, Chris has announced several things, and I think he's going to announce another thing or two on the show. it's going to be a good show. I'm super pumped to have Zaldain on. It's been a
only
while.
throwing a spinning rod for the rest of the year.
Yeah, no, I remember the first time I actually met Chris in person. He had a truck that was falling apart, an old boat that, had hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of hours. He was staying at Fred Rambanis's house in Bixby, and I just remember I was staying there. I was a Bass Nation. I think it was probably a Bass Nation on Keystone. And Fred had said, hey, you can come up and stay there. And I remember he's like, this guy, one of my friends from the West Coast, he's going to stop by. He's driving through. He's fishing the Opens. This was before I fished the Opens, before Chris had made it. And it was Chris Zaldain.
That's cool.
And I just remember being like, oh, this is that kid from the West Coast that had been doing so well in the, was it Stren series, I think, back then, top tens and had made it and stuff. And he's just like he was now, except
he is actually going to shave his mustache on BTL Live tomorrow.
Yeah, that's not going to happen. Last chance to get a call in before we wrap things up, 405-253-5543. We got to get I need a call waiting feature on here, John, because what happens is you have a call and then the calls start stacking up on each other, and then it's hard to get through. Going once, going twice. I'm taking the Sunline Hotline banner down. I got to get over here and take it down on the banners. What else you got? Anything else you had a burning desire to get off your chest, to talk about, to dive into today on BTL? I appreciate you coming down. It's about an hour and a half drive for you, and you've got a lot on your plate. Yeah. So
we'll stay out of your personal life. It looked like a touchy subject, so
it's all good.
No, I appreciate you, man. Thank you.
Whoa, getting a little hot there with the music. But we got to play it. This was BTL on a Monday, January 24th. Tomorrow, Chris Zaldain is on the show if you have any electronics needs. It's not really like a hotline if you just have issues. This is stuff that you guys have spent years and years and stuff perfecting. It's not like a free self-help hotline, correct?
You talking about the Bass Tank?
Yeah, I'm talking about
the sales line. Yeah,
it's a sales line.
Yeah.
Not like a, hey, call it. But if you have an issue and you're interested in possibly working with the Bass Tank, they have a lot of stuff that you guys ship all over the country. They can possibly diagnose what your problem is, get back with you, ship you the correct thing if you want to do it yourself, if you want to drive, if you want to bring it into the Oklahoma shop, then it's worth a call. Yeah. Call them up, talk to them. They'll take care of you. Did I do that right?
That's good.
All right. This has been BTL on a Monday. Thanks, John. I appreciate it. That was fun.